This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
AI has become a buzzword that many apply to almost anything and everything. You cannot go to a trade show these days without seeing some form of AI label being attached to everything from apps to AI-enhanced coffee. Yes, there is such a thing as AI-enhanced coffee. There's AI-influenced healthcare, there's smart agents, and I've been talking about the negative side of the AI buzzword problem. But AI is in a transition. It's transitioning from this hype label, or some would call buzzword bingo term, to becoming real. Around 2016, the convergence of computing power benefited from Moore's Law, funding, investments, venture capitalists, the explosion of data, and open source platforms tipped us into the AI-driven, what some are calling the fourth industrial revolution. AI is a worthy successor to mechanization or mass production, automation. Each one of these have propelled us through the three earlier industrial revolutions. AI can make a difference in accelerating disruptive innovation by bringing a data-driven approach to innovation, invention, and creation. Now, I'm going to throw a flag here talking about data-driven approach. I've written some past blog posts. I've talked about it here on the show. You have to be a little careful about being overly data-driven. I've shared the story before of my years as the CTO at Hewlett-Packard, where the CEO at the time, Mark Hurd, was so data-driven that we would get into what we call these extreme benchmarking analysis, where data drove the decision-making on a day-to-day basis. Now, I'm all for data, but data is just one of many inputs. And AI can play a role in that in sifting through just massive amounts of data in order to better understand what it is, the decisions that you need to make. Now, with all of this, is it really AI invented? Is it AI innovation? Let's step back. Let's not forget that innovation and creation is inspired from our own learnings and experiences. When we say, I have invented, or I created, or I came up with this idea, it's inspired from our own learnings, our own experience. That also includes inspiration from others, what others have done before us. Now, any innovation, if you look and dig deep enough, you will realize that there was something that came before. Something that was that spark, that thing that just triggered it. Look, Einstein was inspired by a physicist ahead of him. Edison was not the first one to invent the light bulb. He was the one to perfect the light bulb. Henry Ford did not invent the automobile. He improved upon the work and the ideas that occurred before him. So even as humans, as we are creative, as we are inventing, we take that inspiration as input as we think through and let our subconscious kind of noodle on it before the light bulb goes off and we've got our big idea that we're going to go do something with. Now, in AI, it can make a difference in accelerating all of this work. But again, is it AI invented or AI inspired? So as I was saying, input and experience plays a key role. And for AI, that comes from the form of the training data supplied to the system. Now, training data is this set of information that you feed to an AI system, and it learns and is recognizing patterns within it. So the early experiments for artificial intelligence was feed it a bunch of photographs, point out the photographs that had a cat in it. It learned what the cat in the photograph looked like, and therefore you could feed it any photograph, and it would tell you if it had a cat in it or not. But it needed large amounts of images And you didn't have to point out the cat. You just had to say, this photo has a cat in it. This photo has a cat in it. This photo does not have a cat in it. And it would learn to discern what is a picture of a cat look like. So training data is critically important. That's what allows AI really to do what it does. And it's part of an element that we call machine learning. And it is about this recognition of the patterns and identifying the best solutions to achieve the defined goals. Early goals, tell me which pictures have a cat. Current goals, much more sophisticated, much more exhaustive, looking at things like make something smaller, make something bigger, optimize for space, optimize for cost, whatever the objective is, but you have to have the training data to let the AI engine go off and do its work. Now that historically has been applied to games like chess and Go, which in the past many believed humans had a unique advantage. Now there's many examples where AI now has beat humans, such as Deep Blue's win over Garry Kasparov, the chess champion. Now it took multiple times. The first time Deep Blue played against Garry won. Then there were some ties, and then eventually Deep Blue got so good that now it can regularly beat the world ranking champion. Or take another example, IBM Watson, which won over Jeopardy, so over the human trivia kings, and being able to make and weird kind of esoteric connections. Or most recently, Google's DeepMind Go playing bot won against the Korean grandmaster of Go. And in fact, it was so devastating to the world of Go players that the top player has retired, saying that a human will never be better than a computer at Go now that this threshold has been achieved. Now, is this proof that AI is becoming smarter than humans? It depends on how you define smart. Is it defined by taking a test and having an IQ number? Is it the ability to memorize a massive amount of information? Or is it critical thinking skills? Or is it the role of the subconscious to make random connections together? What makes humans smart? How do we define a smart human from a not so smart human? Now, we got to be careful here, and let's not jump too fast, too quickly here into what it is we're talking about from the standpoint of smart. In the case of chess, the key is to recognize patterns and to be able to look at so many steps ahead. So can I look at 10 moves ahead or 15 moves ahead? And every move ahead is a factorial of the number of options that are available on the chessboard. So it becomes a very, very large space to have to search out every and all possible answers. So you'd be able to recognize patterns and to look at how many moves ahead. Two skills that computers have become quite good at using machine learning for. So is that the definition of smart? That's what we're going to talk about today. I want to get into this a little bit to discern what is AI's role really in enhancing all of these things. Now, let's not underestimate, though. AI is here and it will have an impact. And it's going to have a direct economic impact. PricewaterhouseCoopers estimates that AI will add 15.7 trillion, that's with a T, trillion, to the global economy by 2030, with the United States seeing a 14.5% increase in the gross domestic product from AI alone. So no argument, AI is here and it will have an impact. The question I want to talk about, though, is will AI have an impact on innovation, on creativity, on the things that we typically associate as being a uniquely human capability? And how, if so, how will it impact? How will it be manifested? How will we experience that? And in what ways can AI be used by you and I to improve the innovations that we are working on? You're listening to this show for a reason. Maybe to learn new skills, learn new capabilities, listen to our guests, to be inspired about how they innovate, how they create, what's their spark. And you're trying to improve your own skill. I'm going to argue today that we need to open our eyes and be ready to look at AI agents, AI support, AI tools that allow us to improve, you and I, to improve our ability to innovate or improve the innovations that we are specifically working on. This is going to be transformative. It's going to be just like when I started off as an architect using pencil on vellum to being able to use software. This is this next step, but for innovation. To cover such topics in a 1-hour show, we will use a series of examples where AI is being used to create, to invent, and understand how it does what it does. So are you ready to jump in? Let's jump in and have this conversation. Let's go. But we'll continue this right after the break. One example of AI is in the writing of stories for Associated Press. AP uses deep learning in a tool that it calls Wordsmith to generate millions of news stories for financial services and sports, and it outpaces the output of all major media companies combined. And basically, the way Wordsmith works is it's trained on articles written by others that were defined as being good. And it takes in things like press releases issued by a company when they release their 10Q or their quarterly reports, or other companies announce a new product, etc. And they take all that input in, they mush it around, and they generate output that matches this pattern of what is a good article. Not that it's different from training of a journalist. Look, it's how we train journalist interns. They go through and they learn how to write for organizations like the Associated Press. Its future plan is to offer medium-specific stories, such as those published online, those read on air by newscasters, publication-specific stories tailored for publications. Like, I'm going to tailor this article for the New York Times. I'm going to write it in a New York Times style, versus I'm going to write this as a BuzzFeed article. Now, the question I immediately ask myself is could they write the script for my show? Could I get a tool like Wordsmith to write my show? Well, not really, because my show is not triggered by press releases and those kinds of things. Now, could they do it in the future? I'm never going to say never, but my show's a little bit different than I'm going to take a press release from a company, mush it around, create an article, put it out, but write it in a style aimed at a specific publication. Now, and I think this is interesting, and I think more and more of the news is actually going to be generated this way. So what's the downside? There's nobody reading the press release to say, is this really a good press release? Or is this worthy even to be published? Or is the press release even accurate? Right? So I could have the AP take in some kind of input, generate a report, generate an article, have it be published in the New York Times, which establishes some credibility, but there's no human in the loop to say, is everything in here true? So those are some of the downsides for an automated tool, as an example. Now, one of my hobbies, which I'm going to guess 99% of you have no idea that I do this, but I write instrumental music. Now, I used to be a musician. I played the piano, organ as a kid. And in fact, my friend of my mom's owned a music store in the south side of Chicago. And I was the cute redheaded kid that sat in the front of the store. It was in a mall playing music to draw people into the store to look at maybe renting a piano so that their kid could learn how to play piano. Now, I'm going to tell you that was 40 years ago, 45 years ago. So that's a long time ago. And I don't play anymore. But I use software. I use digital audio software. And I use one called Ableton. Now, I use this. It gives me instruments, and I can do it all on the computer. I can do it while I'm on the road. And I don't publish this. This is actually instrumentals that I use to see if I can create beats and sounds, etc., to improve my own creativity. I like background sounds. I like background music, and I could never find ones that I really, really liked, so I started creating my own. Recently, though, there has been a new AI plugin for Ableton called Magenta Studio. Now, it's based off of the Google AI research work. It's an AI tool, and I've been experimenting with it to see if it could be a tool, to help me create better instrumentals. Now, Magenta provides a pretty easy way to get started with AI applied to creating music. I can start with blank, meaning I got a single note on the screen, and I can run the Magenta tool, and it'll give me 5, 8, 15, 20 options of bass drum beats or melodies to use them as kind of a spark, a starting point for creating a new song. I can start part of a song, feed that into Magenta, and then it will use that to kind of tailor the options that it gives. Or if I've got maybe the beginning of the song and an end of a song, but I don't have the middle, Magenta can try to fill in the middle part of that. So it's a tool, but it still requires me to say I like that or I don't like that. But in this case, by giving everyone easy access to machine learning models for musical patterns, the research team is testing out AI's ability to generate and modify rhythms and melodies that we as humans, we being kind of that arbitrage of persons, do we like it or not? Now, another example of AI applied to creativity is when Christie in October 2018 auctioned its first work of art generated by an algorithm called Generative Adversarial Network, or GAN. The GAN approach meant that AI was fed 15,000 portraits painted between the 14th and 20th century that trained it in a style of art. Then a portrait was created by one computer, the generating computer, that attempted to convince a second computer, the discriminating computer, that the image it generated should pass as real art. The discriminating computer is trained with portraits to teach it how to discern what a good portrait is. The generating computer task is to create convincing art through this feedback loop, which improves both their capabilities over time, and effectively an AI version of the famous Turing test. So what's a Turing test? It was created by Alan Turing as a definition for determining if something is intelligent. It is where a human asks a question through a computer screen. If the human cannot decide whether a human or a machine is responding to these questions, the machine would be deemed intelligent. In the case of generating good portraits, the system got pretty darn good at it. The portrait that passed the test was sold for $432,000, or 43 times higher than what Christie's own estimate was. That's right, 43 times. And in this case, using GAN, which is kind of the latest and hottest thing in artificial intelligence, you're creating this feedback loop. The generative AI is creating the painting. The discerning computer on the other side is looking at whether or not it can discriminate. Is that good artwork or is that not good artwork? And through that feedback loop, it keeps generating and improving and improving and improving to the point where someone is willing to pay $432,000 for a piece of art developed by artificial intelligence. This use of creativity does beg an important question. Who should get the byline for the article published by the Wordsmith tool for AP? Is it Wordsmith? Who gets the songwriting credit for the new song if it was the spark that inspired the song? Or who should sign their signature to the painting that came out of a GAN network-based AI approach? Who gets credit for it? This is a big conversation occurring in the innovation world when you use such tools. So what do you think? Where do you fall on this path? Keep that in mind, and we're going to expand on this after the break. We have seen how AI can be used as a tool for writing articles, such as Wordsmith for the Associated Press, creating music, the AI plugin tool for Ableton, or for creating a painting using a GAN network AI approach. So the question, though, that I want to ask, given the topic of the show, is could AI be applied to creating ideas that result in high impact innovation. So more fundamentally, could AI replace human creativity? Now, for example, this tool does not exist, but sitting back and thinking about what could be the possibility, there could be a case where we could apply it to what we do here. Now, in addition to the radio show, there are people who have bought my book or who bought the card decks for the questions. There are people out there who teach the workshops that I've designed and developed. They've licensed them and then they run these workshops. So, in fact, recently there was one that I actually personally taught, which is very rare. I don't teach these very often anymore. But I did teach a disruptive ideation workshop that I just facilitated for the U.S. Marine Corps at Quantico in Virginia. Think about it, though, from an AI perspective. I could use everything generated across all of these workshops that are now being taught worldwide as the training data for the AI engine. So in the case of the Marine Corps, we've now facilitated that workshop twice. So we have twice the training data. That includes things like the problem statements. How do you define what the problem, the area of focus is? You've got the raw ideas from an individual ideation portion of the workshop. You have the expanded ideas from team ideation, where individual ideas now are enhanced by the other members of the team. Then you come up with your best ideas from the ranking stage, the result being the selection of the best idea that you're going to move forward with. Now, the objective would be to train the AI to correlate the problem to the best idea. Could you train AI to say, understand the problem, understand all of the possible idea options, and pre-select and get down to the best idea? I don't think so. I'm not quite sure that you can make that big of a leap with today's engines. But there's one option I do think that AI could play, and that is use it as a tool to take the raw ideas and apply AI to expand, enhance, or improve on the ideas. So when I teach a facilitated workshop, we will run through an individual ideation part of the exercise. Everybody's heads down, no talking, and people are just cranking out ideas as fast as they can. Then they stand up and they share those amongst their team. Team could be, 8 to 12 people. Everybody stands up, shares an idea, and the ideas get grouped because you'll have duplicates or very similar kinds of ideas. Then it becomes into, how do I enhance those ideas? How do I take that idea and make it better? How do I plus it is another way we refer to it. Could you use AI to look at those ideas and then come back with a series of things that would enhance it? Think of it as its own version of Scamper. Scamper is a tool. I've taught it many times. There's actually past shows on it. You can hop on over to killerinnovations.com. Just type in Scamper. You may have to go over to the blog now that I think about it. Go over to philmckinney.com and type Scamper in. And there's a whole series that teaches you how to use Scamper to take one idea and enhance it and expand it and make it a significantly different and better idea. So could AI become a digital version of Scamper? Yeah, it could be. Now, this is something I could get excited about. It's a tool to help the human side of brainstorming get past the mental blocks of generating more or better ideas. Similar to the way that I use Magento and Ableton to maybe get started with a drum beat or a melody that I in turn then turn into an instrumental song that I use for my own facilitated workshops or when I'm running my own personal, one-on-one kind of innovation efforts. This would just become yet another tool like any of those. So if we use AI as a tool to create, let's get back to the question that I asked before. Who should get the byline for the article published by the Wordsmith tool, or who gets the songwriting credit when it comes to a song created using Magento Studio, or who should sign their signature to the painting, or who should get the credit on the patent application for a tool that helped in the brainstorming? Now, AI augments what authors and inventors can do. Now, Just as calculators make advanced mathematics more accessible without having an innate talent at arithmetic, AI makes creation and innovation more acceptable to a wider range of people by simplifying tasks and freeing up human experts for what they do best. Now, there will be some who will nitpick on whether AI produced a song or a drawing or a drug shows anything more than derivative creativity or inventiveness honed on human experience and guided by human programmed code. I can take the other side of the table of this argument and say they're ignoring that human authors and inventors do precisely the same thing. We use inspiration from others to create something new. In the case of AI, it's fed a specific library of inspiration, of data, the learning or training data set. That is that AI's version of inspiration. Human inspiration is not controlled or fed to us. We can gather it from anywhere. Eventually, people would argue that AI will do the same thing. You just plug the AI onto the internet and it just starts sucking in anything and everything that it can read. So is it really that different from what a human does to what AI does? Now, with advances in machine learning, the interaction between the algorithms and the creative process is changing. AI now allows artists to find unexpected beauty in the chaos and complexity that exceeds really even our human ability to grasp it. Provides humans with systematic analysis they need to make the novel leaps into something wholly new. I can tell you that just in my own experience with the Magenta Studio and Ableton, it has given me beats and melodies I would have never have thought of, never in 1,000 years. But then once you hear it, you go, wow, that's really great. I love that. That's the path I am going to go down. Now, these new forms of AI can interact with artists in a fashion like improvisational jazz, where musicians feed off of cues from each other in a creative feedback loop. Now, no AI is in itself the wellspring or the creator of creativity, in my opinion. I do not believe that AI is really the creator of creativity. The creativity that AI displays flows either from the algorithm used to design and train it, or from the instructions provided by the users operating it. And unlike human beings, algorithms do not have the quintessential linchpin upon which to hang creativity, and that is free will. Right? Sometimes we can't even describe why I like a certain beat or a melody that's being played in music. I just know that I do. It's something that I feel. It's something I can't score it through some kind of a point system and say, oh, that's a 14.3, therefore I like it. That's part of that free will. My free will to choose to like something or not like something. AI is not something to be afraid of. It's something to engage with. It's something to experiment with. All of these topics that we're talking about today, if there's a Luddite fear of AI prevails, we risk destabling the very foundation of investment, risk-taking, entrepreneurship that has propelled the progress of science for thousands of years. If we sit back and we play and wave our hands and we're all scared of AI, we will kill it. But think back, if things had been killed, we had not advanced on medicine or transportation or other things. It's the same thing. We cannot assume that everything's going to work out. AI can create risks if we are not deliberate in the training data, avoid bias in the training data, and define how we measure goodness, such as via the GAN approaches. Critical to having a discussion is how we as a society will make decisions based on what AI is telling us. Now, I am very optimistic about the role AI can play as a tool, especially given my own personal experience with AI enhancement to music correction. This is an area that we will see explosive investment and introduction of new tools based on AI. So we will keep an eye on it here in the show, and we will bring you regular updates. So don't go anywhere. We will be going into segment 4 of the show. We do have a new episode of 5 Minutes to New Ideas, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. Back in the early days of this show, I would share what I called a killer question in each episode. These questions were designed to be used in your personal, team, or organization's innovation efforts. Now, based on feedback from listeners just like you, we've decided to bring it back, with some improvements. Each episode of the Killer Innovations has a segment that I'm now calling 5 Minutes to New Ideas. It's designed for the creative mind looking for that next great idea. Each episode will challenge you to think differently about yourself, your business, and your products and services by asking unique, funny, and sometimes crazy questions. These questions are designed to force you to look beyond the obvious and to uncover ideas and opportunities you never before considered. So, get out your notebook and be ready to uncover that game-changing idea. Here is 5 Minutes to New Ideas. It is normal that no two people are exactly alike, not even twins. So the word normal should not be confused with the word average. If you leave your fingerprints on something, you might as well leave your name and address since no two people have the same prints. You hear music and see a sunrise differently from any other person. You might enjoy a movie that your spouse would do anything to avoid. You might like being in a crowd of friends while your spouse prefers an evening being just the two of you. When you say, "I want my child to be normal," you do not mean average, and you shouldn't. What you mean is that you want your child to grow up with their own abilities, talents, likes, and dislikes. So to be normal is not to be average, it is to be different. But for some reason, we are not comfortable showing our differences because we think society is expecting something we are not. We present one face to the world as a rule, and another one to ourselves. There are millions of people who feel inadequate just because they're not like what they think they see around themselves. They're not inadequate at all. It's just that they've never understood that we're not supposed to be like everyone else because no one is. We're supposed to be ourselves and realize that we are distinct individuals. Face it, we are all quirky. Take a look at the great thought leaders. Socrates stood for hours in the snow, oblivious to the wind and cold, working out a philosophy problem. Churchill walked into the bedroom of the President of the United States with only a towel wrapped around his waist. And Einstein could go a whole lifetime without giving thought to whether or not he needed a haircut. Are these people normal or abnormal? They are normal. That is the way they do things, which is they're normal. I'm sure there are lots of people who are keeping themselves from something they'd like to do because none of their friends are doing it. The truth of the matter is that they would be normal to follow their own natural inclinations. Since no two people are alike, they are in fact being abnormal in copying their friends. If you try to conform to the crowd, you're trying to act as people act on the surface. It isn't you. What's normal for you, for me, it's not easily discovered. It's not found by looking around at other people. It is found only by inward searching, by the knowledge of who I am, not by watching others. Each of us is outstanding in some way. Every person on earth has a superpower for something. When we find it, life takes on a new meaning and excitement. When you committed the effort to develop your superpower, a lot of other people will wish they were like you. But they shouldn't. Being normal is being what you are as an individual. This applies to everyone, including those that society labels as not normal, such as those on the autism spectrum. Rather than someone on the autism spectrum trying to act like people who society thinks as being normal, what is wrong with them being themselves and acting their normal? We as a society have defined normal based on some artificial standard we see around ourselves. Society has never understood that we're not supposed to be like everyone else because no one is. We need to realize that each person is a distinct individual. So, what are the steps to being content with being ourselves? Face it, everybody knows you cannot be all things to all people. You can't do all things at once. You can't do all things equally well. You can't do all things better than anyone else. Your humanity is showing just like everyone else. So, You have to find out who you are and be that. You have to decide what comes first and do that. You have to discover your strengths and use them. You have to learn not to compete with others because no one else is in the contest of being you. Then you will have learned to accept your own uniqueness. You will have learned to set priorities and make decisions. You will have learned to live with your limitations. You will have learned to give yourself the respect that it is due, and you will be a vital part of society. Dare to believe that you are wonderful, that you are a unique person, that you are a once in all of history event, that it's more than a right, it's your duty to be who you are, that appearing normal is not a puzzle you need to solve, and you will be comfortable being your unique self and not someone else. Each and every one of us is a mystery and a miracle. What a shame it is to try to paint out that amazing you with the likeness of someone else. To be normal is to be ourselves, and never to be average. I'm Phil McKinney, and thanks for listening. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join in. If you have any comments or suggestions, drop me a note at phil@killerinnovations.com. Beyond this show, I write about my personal experiences of being in the innovation game for the last 2 decades. Topics include innovation, creativity, culture, team building, metrics, frustrations, leadership, and how to win. You can find that content over at philmckinney.com. You can also find out information about my book, Beyond the Obvious, including extensive excerpts over at beyondtheobvious.com. You can find hardcover, digital, and audio versions of my book on Amazon or wherever you get your books from. This episode of Killer Innovations was produced by the Innovators Network. You can find the show notes and the entire show catalog going back to 2005 at killerinnovations.com. I'll talk to you next week, and in the meantime, go out and change the world with your killer innovation. Bye-bye.